Before this luxury transatlantic flight even took off, an arrogant, entitled millionaire demanded that a modestly dressed young woman be forcefully dragged off the plane simply because she smelled like poverty. He publicly humiliated her, screamed at the flight attendants, and threatened to buy the airline just to fire everyone. He thought he was the most powerful man in the sky, but he had absolutely no idea that the quiet woman sitting across from him didn't just buy a first-class ticket. She owned the entire airline. This is the story of the ultimate first-class takedown and why you should never, ever mess with the quietest person in the room. The drama unfolded on a rainy Tuesday evening inside the ultra-exclusive Diamond-class cabin of Oceanic Airways. A ticket for this private suite from New York to London cost a staggering $25,000. It was an oasis of absolute luxury, featuring sliding privacy doors, plush leather reclining beds, and bottomless Dom Perignon. Sitting in Suite 1B was Richard Vance. Richard was a 50-something hedge fund manager who wore his wealth like a weapon. He had a tailored Italian suit, a gold Rolex that cost more than a house, and an ego that barely fit inside the massive airplane. From the moment he boarded, he made it his personal mission to make the cabin crew absolutely miserable. "Excuse me," Richard barked, snapping his fingers repeatedly at Sarah, the lead flight attendant. "I specifically asked for my champagne to be chilled to exactly 42 degrees. This feels like 45. Do you people have any idea how much I paid to be on this flight? Fix it, now." Sarah, maintaining her professional smile despite the disrespect, nodded quickly. "Right away, Mr. Vance. I apologize for the inconvenience." Richard scoffed, adjusting his Rolex. He thrived on the feeling of superiority. He loved being surrounded by elite, like-minded billionaires. But his smug satisfaction evaporated the moment the final passenger boarded the plane. Walking down the aisle towards Suite 1A, the most prestigious seat on the entire aircraft, located directly across from Richard, was a young woman in her late 20s. She wasn't wearing Prada. She wasn't carrying a Birkin bag. She was wearing a faded, oversized grey hoodie, worn-out blue jeans, and scuffed white sneakers. She had no makeup on. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and she carried a cheap canvas backpack. She looked exhausted, like a college student who had just finished a grueling exam week. Richard's eyes widened in sheer horror. He watched in disbelief as the young woman tossed her cheap backpack onto the floor of the $25,000 suite and collapsed into the plush leather seat with a soft sigh. To Richard, this was an absolute insult. He didn't pay a premium just to breathe the same recycled air as someone who looked like they lived in a trailer park. His face flushed bright red with indignation. He immediately slammed his hand down on the call button. "Sarah!" Richard yelled, his voice carrying through the silent, luxurious cabin. "Get over here right this second. We have a serious security breach." Sarah, the lead flight attendant, hurried down the aisle, her face pale with concern. In her 10 years of flying the ultra-rich across the Atlantic, she had dealt with her fair share of difficult passengers. But Richard Vance was a completely different breed of toxic. "Mr. Vance, is everything all right?" Sarah asked softly, keeping her voice low to maintain the serene atmosphere of the cabin. "No, it is absolutely not all right," Richard loudly declared, making zero effort to lower his voice. He aggressively pointed a manicured finger across the aisle toward the young woman in the grey hoodie. "Explain to me right now how a homeless person got past the gate agents. Did she wander on during the cleaning sweep?" Sarah quickly checked her digital passenger tablet, her eyes scanning the manifest for Suite 1A. She blinked in surprise, then looked back at Richard. "Sir, I assure you there is no mistake. That passenger holds a fully paid first-class ticket." Richard let out a sharp, cruel laugh, that echoed through the quiet cabin. A fully paid ticket, please. She probably stole somebody's credit card, or she's a baggage handler flying on a free buddy pass. He stepped out of his suite, closing the distance between himself and the young woman. He loomed over her, his face twisted in disgust. "Listen to me, little girl," Richard sneered, crossing his arms. "I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but you don't belong here. You are making the entire cabin smell like cheap soap, sweat, and poverty. You are ruining my flight experience before we've even left the tarmac." The young woman slowly opened her eyes. She didn't flinch. She didn't look intimidated by the towering millionaire or his expensive suit. She casually reached up and slid one side of her noise-cancelling headphones off her ear. She looked Richard up and down with an expression of pure, icy indifference. "I highly recommend you sit down and fasten your seatbelt, Richard," she said. Her voice was quiet, steady, and carried a terrifying amount of authority. "We are about to push back from the gate. You are blocking the aisle." Richard's face turned a violent shade of purple. Nobody, especially not someone dressed like a college dropout, spoke to him like that. His ego, fragile and massive at the same time, completely shattered. He spun around to face the flight attendant, his eyes bulging with rage. "Did you hear how she just spoke to me?" Richard screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "I want her thrown off this plane immediately. I manage a $5 billion hedge fund. I spend more on wine in a month than you make in a decade. Get the captain out here right now. If she isn't dragged off this aircraft in 2 minutes, I will personally buy this failing airline, just to fire every single one of you." Sarah took a step back, her hands trembling slightly. "Sir, please lower your voice. I cannot remove a paying passenger without cause." "I am the cause," Richard roared, slamming his fist against the privacy partition of Suite 1A. "It's either her or me, but let me promise you this. If I walk off this plane, my lawyers will bankrupt your entire company by morning." The tension in the first-class cabin was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sarah, the flight attendant, was on the verge of tears, trapped between a deranged millionaire and strict aviation protocols. But Richard Vance was done waiting. His inflated ego demanded immediate submission, and since the flight attendant wasn't moving fast enough, he decided to take matters into his own hands. With a furious growl, Richard lunged forward into Suite 1A and reached for the young woman's faded canvas backpack resting on the floor. "If you people are too incompetent to take out the trash," Richard spat, grabbing the strap of the bag, "then I'll throw it out onto the tarmac myself." Before Richard could even lift the bag an inch off the carpet, a hand shot out like lightning. The young woman gripped Richard's wrist. Her grip wasn't frantic or panicky. It was terrifyingly steady, like a steel vice. She slowly looked up at him, the indifference in her eyes completely gone, replaced by a cold, burning intensity. "Do not touch my property," she whispered. The tone of her voice was so absolute, so chillingly commanding, that Richard instinctively froze. For a split second, the billionaire hedge fund manager felt a cold shiver of fear run down his spine. "What is the meaning of this?" a booming voice suddenly echoed from the front of the cabin. Captain Miller, a decorated veteran pilot with 30 years of experience, stepped out of the cockpit. He had heard the screaming through the reinforced door and was not about to let his flight be delayed by a passenger tantrum. Richard immediately snatched his wrist back, pointing a trembling, accusing finger at the young woman. He quickly shifted back into his favorite role, the wealthy victim. "Captain!" Richard yelled. "Thank God, this woman just assaulted me. She sneaked into the first-class cabin. She's harassing the passengers, and your incompetent flight attendant refuses to do her job. I demand that she be arrested and removed from my flight immediately." Captain Miller frowned. In aviation, a physical altercation before takeoff was a guaranteed one-way ticket off the plane. He turned his stern gaze toward the young woman in the oversized hoodie. "Miss," the captain said firmly, holding out his hand, "I need to see your boarding pass and a government-issued ID right now." Richard smirked, crossing his arms over his expensive suit. He had won. The peasant was finally getting kicked out. He could almost taste the victory. The young woman didn't argue. She didn't try to defend herself against Richard's lies. She simply unzipped the front pocket of her faded backpack, reached inside, and pulled out a sleek, heavy, solid black metal card. It wasn't a standard ID, it had no airline logos on it, just a subtle engraved gold crest. She handed it to the captain in complete silence. Captain Miller took the card. He looked down at it, annoyed, but the moment his eyes registered the gold crest and the name engraved on the metal, the colour completely drained from his face. Before we reveal exactly whose name was engraved on that solid black metal card, take 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button and like the video. It helps us bring you more satisfying karma stories every single day. Have you subscribed? Great. Now, let's get back to the flight and see the exact moment this arrogant millionaire realizes his life is over. Captain Miller's hands actually began to shake. He had worked for Oceanic Airways for 3 decades. He knew exactly what that black metal card was. It was the ultimate executive override key, issued only to the absolute top of the corporate food chain. And the name engraved in gold on the front was one that commanded immediate, unquestionable respect. The captain slowly lowered the card, snapped his heels together, and gave a sharp, respectful bow. "Miss Pierce," Captain Miller said, his voice completely devoid of its previous sternness, replaced by pure professional panic. "Welcome aboard your aircraft. I apologize deeply. Corporate did not inform us that the CEO would be flying with us tonight." Richard Vance froze. The smug, victorious smile practically melted off his face. His brain struggled to process what the veteran pilot had just said. "CEO?" Richard sputtered, letting out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "Captain, are you blind? Look at her. She's wearing a thrift store hoodie. There's no way she is Victoria Pierce. Jonathan Pierce owns this airline." The young woman, Victoria Pierce, finally stood up from her plush leather seat. She didn't need to yell. Her mere presence now filled the cabin with an overwhelming aura of power. "My father, Jonathan Pierce, passed away 6 months ago, Richard," Victoria said coldly, slipping the black card back into her pocket. "I took over as majority shareholder and CEO of Oceanic Group, and my father always taught me that the only way to truly understand your company is to experience it from the bottom up, without the red carpets, without the fake smiles." Richard took a step back, bumping into the wall of his private suite. His face, previously red with rage, was now completely drained of colour. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. "I've been flying our international routes all month undercover to audit our first-class service," Victoria continued, taking a slow step toward the trembling millionaire. "And until today, my biggest concern was whether the champagne was chilled to the exact right temperature." She stopped right in front of Richard, looking him dead in the eyes. "But you just showed me a much bigger problem. You showed me that a man with a heavy wallet thinks he has the right to verbally abuse my crew, assault my passengers, and treat my aircraft like his personal playground." Richard swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Ms. Pierce, I was just frustrated. I had a long day at the firm. Please, let's just sit down and—" "No," Victoria interrupted, her voice snapping like a whip. "You are not sitting down because you are no longer a passenger on my airline." The absolute silence in the first-class cabin was deafening. Richard Vance, a man who built his entire life around intimidating others, was now trembling under the icy gaze of a woman half his age in a thrift store hoodie. Victoria turned her attention away from the sweating millionaire and looked at the veteran pilot. "Captain Miller," Victoria said, her tone strictly business, "initiate an involuntary offload protocol. Classify it as a Level 1 threat. Aggressive behavior, verbal abuse of the flight crew, and attempted physical assault on another passenger." Captain Miller didn't hesitate for a single second. He unclipped the heavy red intercom phone from the cabin wall. "Gate control, this is Captain Miller on Flight 802. We have a code red hostile passenger in Suite 1B. I need armed airport police at door 1 left, immediately for a forced removal." Hearing the words, armed police, Richard completely lost his mind. His arrogance was entirely gone, replaced by pure, desperate panic. He took a step toward Victoria, raising his hands in a pathetic begging gesture. "Miss Pierce, wait, please, you can't do this," Richard pleaded, his voice cracking. "I have a vital board meeting in London in 7 hours. It's a multi-million-dollar merger. If I miss this flight, my investors will crucify me." Victoria slowly tilted her head. "I thought you managed a $5 billion fund, Richard. Surely a man of your immense wealth can just buy his own private jet." I'll pay double for the ticket. I'll apologize to the flight attendant," Richard stammered, frantically pulling out a sleek black titanium credit card from his wallet. "Here, take it. Charge me whatever you want." Victoria didn't even look at the card. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "Your money has absolutely no value here, Richard. You thought you could buy the right to treat my staff like garbage, but my crew's dignity is not for sale." Before Richard could try to bribe her again, the heavy metal door at the front of the aircraft hissed open. 3 heavily armed airport police officers in dark, tactical uniforms stepped into the luxurious cabin. Their heavy boots thudded against the plush carpet. Sarah, the flight attendant whom Richard had viciously screamed at just 10 minutes earlier, stood near the galley. A small, immensely satisfied smile finally broke through her professional demeanor. The monster who had threatened her job was about to get exactly what he deserved. The lead police officer approached Captain Miller. "Captain, who is the disruptive passenger?" Captain Miller pointed a steady finger directly at the trembling millionaire. "That man right there, Suite 1B. I want him off my aircraft immediately." "Get your hands off me," Richard screamed, instinctively jerking his arm away as the first police officer grabbed him. It was the worst mistake he could have possibly made. In an airport environment, resisting armed police is an instant escalation. Before Richard could even blink, the 2 officers spun him around, forced his hands behind his back, and the cold, heavy metal of police handcuffs clicked shut around his expensive Rolex. "Wait, no, I'm cooperating." Richard panicked, the reality of his situation finally crushing his ego. He wasn't a powerful billionaire right now. He was just a criminal being arrested on a plane. The officers began marching him down the aisle toward the exit. But just as they reached the cabin door, Victoria raised her hand. "Officers, hold on a moment." The police stopped, allowing Victoria to step up directly in front of the sweating, handcuffed millionaire. "Richard," Victoria said smoothly, her voice echoing perfectly in the quiet cabin, "since you are going to miss your multi-million-dollar merger in London, I thought you should know how you're getting home today." Richard looked up at her with terrified, tear-filled eyes. "You aren't," Victoria whispered, leaning in slightly. "As CEO, I'm officially placing you on the lifetime global no-fly list for Oceanic Airways. And since we are part of the Star Alliance network, your name will be blacklisted from every major airline on the planet. From now on, if you want to cross the ocean, I highly suggest you learn how to swim." Richard let out a pathetic, broken sob as the police forcefully dragged him off the aircraft and out into the terminal. His career, His reputation and his freedom to travel were permanently destroyed in less than 10 minutes. With the trash finally taken out, Victoria turned her attention to Sarah, the flight attendant. Sarah was still standing near the galley, visibly shaking from the adrenaline of the entire ordeal. Victoria's cold, boss-like demeanour instantly vanished, replaced by a warm, kind smile. She gently placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Sarah, you handled that monster with absolute grace and professionalism," Victoria said softly. "When we land in London, I want you to call my executive office. You are getting a full promotion to chief cabin director and a $10,000 bonus for dealing with that nightmare." Sarah covered her mouth, tears of joy welling up in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Pierce." And that brings us to the end of today's story on The Silent Observer. Do you think Victoria went too far by putting Richard on a lifetime global no-fly list? Or did the arrogant millionaire get exactly the brutal karma he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you loved seeing this rich bully get put in his place, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a satisfying story of true justice. Until next time, stay silent and keep observing.